You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner here on this wonderful Monday. Well, it's noon, so it wouldn't be afternoon. Well, I guess now technically it is Eastern time. For Jim, of course, it's 9%, 9 a.m. Pacific, and for Persephone, no one has any idea because she's foreign. Look, I have a great episode up right now, two actually. One I did Friday with Nikos Soterakopoulos on the manosphere, and one I just did with a 20-year-old brilliant young philosopher. He's an objectivist named Liam Staten. Go check them both out on The Rational Egoist. Highly, highly recommended. And remember, please, that we really like the super chats and the super stickers. And like, share, subscribe, share from YouTube, do all these wonderful things. We have the great Jim Valliant here with us today. Jim, welcome again.
Howdy.
Howdy?
Howdy. That's what we say out west when we greet other West.
I've been out there and nobody told me howdy.
I did. I recall even using the word.
Yeah, you said we.
Well, it's the royal we, and you will hear it occasionally.
All right, so I'm a little confused. So they had this negotiation about the war in Iran over there in Pakistan. And they came out, and Donald Trump put out a Truth Social post where he says he's going to blockade, not him personally, but the U.S. is going to blockade entirely the Straits of Hormuz. But then Central Command came out and said, no, actually, we're just going to be blockading Iranian ports within the Straits of Hormuz. So, first of all, Jim, what the hell is going on? And what do you think about it?
Well, I don't think well of it. We debated the issue of the Iran war, and I believe that it is perfectly moral to go to war against Iran and in America's interest. That I will not change about. But of course, Mr. Trump has fulfilled my worst fears. And you were right when it comes to Trump himself being the guy in charge of this war. I'm dramatically disappointed. For example, we're shutting down Iran. Our point here with the blockade is the same with Iran's blockade. Iran's blockade was going to allow through those who paid their toll or their own ships. And similarly, the U.S. blockade is one that will allow non-Iranian ships to go through if they can manage it. So it's a blockade is simply a filter. And I knew that from the outset. But the point, though, is in any rational war, you would shut down all trade from the enemy altogether from the outset. It wouldn't be something that could even be on the table. So, or the electric grid, or bridges, or all the other things that should be done if you're going to do a war properly. But the United States of America, and to a large extent Israel, are incapable of morally understanding what it takes to win a war decisively and as quickly as possible. You make them hurt and you make them surrender. Well, Mr. Trump is filled with all kinds of contradictions. That is a fact. It is a horrific set of, if you were dating someone and they gave you these kind of mixed signals, you'd say, red flag, this is a person with serious issues. I'm sorry, I don't want a relationship with that person. This guy, when it comes to war and peace, when it comes to mixed signals, I'm going to wipe them out. I'm going to demand unconditional surrender. They're going to be so sorry. I'm going to blast them back to the dark ages. They're never going to be able to ... And then what does he do? He does the half-assed war, which of course has not caused the Iranian regime to collapse. Okay, they've taken out a whole raft of leadership, but they're still a rump regime. That's what we call it in history. See, the government still exists when you take out the leadership. And the government still exists. It's still capable of killing its own people. It's still capable of mining the Straits of Hormuz. Now, they thought that and frankly, they did. The Iranians got one completely over on them. We can asymmetrically shut down, transport through the Straits of Hormuz, and therefore we've got you, Mr. Trump. Our extortion on the rest of the world will, because there is world markets for oil and world markets for fertilizer. That extortion worked, in effect. So what did Trump try to do? And give Trump whatever credit there is to give Mr. Trump, is turn the tables on them in terms of blockade. No, you guys are the ones who are going to be blockaded, not us. Now, how do you pull that off? Will that be pulled off? Iran is, of course, he says, I'm negotiating, and Iran says they're not negotiating. But he's confident that there'll be Trump is confident there'll be a positive outcome to negotiations with people who are denying that they're even negotiating with him. I mean, how can you engage in good faith negotiation? I mean, but more than that, people who continuously talk about America the way they still do, you can't have a negotiation. It is beyond the realm of negotiating and bargaining and compromising when you're at this point, Mr. Trump. There's no further point in talking to them, except what? For us to pull out so you can get oil prices to go down, the Strait of Hormuz to open, and pretend that you won when you probably only set them back a few years in there. He still says Mr. Trump has not yet met his own goals. And he says, we've won. But of course, they still have the capacity to make missiles. They still have missile launchers. The government is still in power. He's negotiating with somebody. So, he talks out of both sides of his mouth in a ridiculously contradictory way. He cannot be trusted to wage war, obviously, however moral the war may have been from the outset to engage in. And part of it, again, you've been vindicated to a large extent in the sense of Mr. Trump running this war, because you just listen to the way what it's really doing too worldwide is bad. Okay, the impact on NATO as such, for example. All kinds of secondary consequences. And you were there in the front line saying, look, there's all these secondary fallout consequences. And we're just beginning to experience the secondary fallout consequences. So it would have been better to have done nothing. When you think of the people who've died, Israeli civilians, people in neighboring Arab states, American soldiers that have died. And for what? To set back their military a few years?
Yeah.
To encourage them?
Jim,
reward them, in effect?
So, people would ask me one question. First, did I support the war? And my initial thing, and there's, I don't want to rehash it, but was it's unconstitutional. But then the next question I would get is, okay, would you support Congress declaring war? And what my answer was, I could be talked into it, but I'm very skeptical given the man who is at the helm. And now, it's like you said, and here's part of the problem. Okay, I want to know when the objectives are met, but then that takes telling us clearly what the objectives are, which we don't know. It's, it changes from day to day. It's, we've won the war. The war's over. We don't even have to be there. We're just going to keep hitting them. We don't, they better open the Straits of Hormuz. The Straits of Hormuz aren't even closed. And, we don't even need the Straits of Hormuz. And then, of course, he gives his red lines where he says, if they're not open by whatever date, by 8 o'clock tonight, within 48 hours, we're going to obliterate them. And then I'm going to extend this for 5 days, then 2 weeks. And note that it's not now obliteration that's going to take place, which is what he said previously. We're going to blockade. We're going to one up their blockade. And there's a lot of, like you talked about, the different consequences. So, I mean, I'm not a military strategist, but I was curious. And for what it's worth, I did ask Claude this morning what experts think about the potential of just blocking the Iranian ports. And it doesn't seem that's a very feasible thing to pull off anyway. But also, I've seen a lot of people, Jim, and they say, well, look, this is a masterclass from Trump because now he's forcing people to buy from America. They have to buy American oil, oil from us. But the thing is this, we're not a collective, right? I'm not getting a check if they buy oil from an American company or from a company that's filtering their oil through Iran. What I'm getting is a higher gas bill.
And
right?
higher prices that result from all of
right.
higher petroleum. Because it's a worldwide, Mr. Trump, it's a worldwide market in petroleum.
Right.
And,
And Jim, when you go to war, I get, right? If we're in a real war, and you tell me, listen, Mike, you know, you're going to have to do without some things. This is very important. You make the case to me and I say, okay, I can do that, right? I mean, me personally, I've gone decades without the amenities. I could go a few years, right? I can do it. But there's been no case made by the administration. The Congress didn't debate it. They haven't told us what the consequences are. They keep telling us we're winning. And now I'm hearing from a lot of people in Trumpistan that we are, this is a good thing because now people are going to be buying oil from America. But buying from America, it, of course, means buying from specific entities, not buying from me. So,
right.
I mean,
good for Exxon, you know.
right. But I mean, at this point, Jim, from somebody who is, you know, more of a hawk than what I am, what would be victory? Because let me just tell you, from my perspective, if the claim is, right, the claim has been all along, Iran is a nuclear threat and they sponsor terror proxies around the region. So victory to me seems eliminating any nuclear threat they have and stopping their ability to fund proxies around the region.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
You know, the military set out a bunch of specific goals. They have not been achieved by Trump's own admission. He says mostly, largely, which means they still have a missile capacity, which means they still have so the specific concrete list has not been achieved. Let's put it that way. But I would say that specific concrete list is not enough. Victory would, and by the way, Mr. Trump, the term unconditional surrender, let me define that a little bit for you. It's not
That's
when they
the
come
other
back
thing.
with 10 points of, no, these are our demands, these are our conditions. No. Unconditional surrender means they say yes to anything we demand of them. Okay, that's just the psychological state known as unconditional surrender when they don't have these are our counter demands. Okay, that's no, but the real standard for victory here has to be the end of the regime and the replacement of that regime by something more pro-Western, less belligerent, some new, different kind of government altogether must be there, or I can't imagine this being a long-term victory because all you've done is kick the can down the road. Otherwise. And in fact, you've done worse. You've countered deterrence by drawing red lines constantly, as Mr. Trump has done, and by letting them go by. And I'm giving them more 2 days, 10 days, 11 days, 2 weeks. You know, he keeps letting the red lines go by. All right. And without it, that is the opposite impact of deterrence. This can only encourage every bad guy in the world, Muslim or non-Muslim, every bad guy, bad actor, enemy of America out there is encouraged because it's the opposite of deterrence. There should be a concept where we say, you know, it's like appeasement, but only worse.
Encouragement.
But we should have it in the military context, like as we do with deterrence. There should be a specific, you know what I mean, military strategic application of that. Because what you're doing is you're encouraging, rewarding, more than appeasing, you're encouraging and rewarding aggressive bad behavior. So if I seek a nuclear weapon, I am someone you want to negotiate with. If I yell death to America, I'll get a deal at the end of the day. If I kill
Jim,
people
wasn't this
around the region, you see my point?
Yeah, I remember. So there's a couple things, but when it comes to this, going back to the war in Iraq, Saddam didn't have weapons of mass destruction. He got toppled. Gaddafi gave up his weapons of mass destruction. He got toppled.
Anyway.
North Korea continued pursuing them. Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
So,
I was screaming bloody murder in the 1990s.
Right. So it seems that the message is clear. Yeah. You better get yourself some nukes.
Nuke up.
Right. I mean that
as soon as possible.
that seems clear to me. And then the red line stuff. I did not want anything to do with bombing Syria when Obama was in office. As horrible as it is to use chemical or biological weapons, ultimately you can't just go and get involved everywhere in the world where some type of mistreatment or atrocity is committed. But once Obama says, this is my red line, if you do this, I'm taking you out, and then you don't do anything, Just stop with the red lines.
You get ISIS, and that's what happened. I mean, and look, there's no question in my mind, regimes. I mean, Iraq had a nuclear program the Israelis took out once upon a time.
In 81, right?
Right, exactly.
Took
and
out the
so
reactor.
so the concern in the West, and look, Syria did under Obama use chemical weapons, and look, Iran is clearly enriching uranium with only one thing in mind, it seems to me, logically. So, but the point is that these evil regimes, declaring death to America or posturing the way they do against the West, they are perfectly willing to do anything, to go after civilians, use such weapons. Now, the question is, and want such weapons. That's not the question in my mind. They want it. The question is, do they have it? And will they use it? And to what degree are they a threat in the long run? It seemed to me that our response to 9/11, 26 years ago now, was utterly misbegotten, pathetic. The wrong wars waged the wrong way. If you're going to do what you're going to do and reshape the Middle East, which is indeed what 9/11, I mean, just like Pearl Harbor caused World War II for America.
Yeah.
So 9/11 should have caused a dramatic response to Islamism. And I mean across the board Islamism. Because any weakness to any of them would be counter-deterrent, you see, would be to encourage them to do more 9/11s, to reward them, in effect, for 9/11. Because if you don't act in self-defense, you are setting yourself up for more attack. The minute you do compromise with evil, you're setting yourself up for more compromises with evil and the continuation of that threat. So what can I tell you?
I think there's two problems. One of them I would have picked up on. The other I got from somebody else. And I'm not sure about it, but I want to ask you what you think. The first is Trump is a narcissist who's obsessed with making deals and believes he can deal with anybody. He has previously said they'll end up in war with Iran because they don't know how to negotiate. He vastly overestimates his ability to make a deal with anybody, and he's obsessed with doing so. The other thing is, and this is Richard, I don't know how to say his last name, Hanania, I don't know, but what he said is basically that the Straits of Hormuz have broke Trump. He said that Trump had no idea what the impact of the Straits of Hormuz was, what Iran's control over them were, what was going to come out of it. And so you see all these contradictory statements from Trump on the issue. Yeah. And I don't, like I said, I'm not positive about it, but from my vantage point in seeing Trump, it seems like he was not prepared for this, that he did not anticipate this.
And there's no excuse for that, because the strategic minds at the Pentagon and the CIA have long known about the danger to the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, decades ago, we had to deal with their threats on the Straits of Hormuz. And so shouldn't have been a surprise to Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump, if you don't actually eliminate the regime, they will continue to have this asymmetrical threat to the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that should have been rather obvious from the outset, but and the problem does not stop. I mean, they're sending in minesweepers now, and they're getting minesweepers from Britain or whoever else.
That's the other thing. He keeps saying these people are going to help, and then they immediately come out and say no.
And they've betrayed us, and they've exactly. So this ridiculous messaging that comes out from Mr. Trump only adds to the problem.
Jim, when did Age of Turbulence come out? Alan Greenspan's autobiography, 2008, I think, maybe 2007.
I'm thinking late in the George W. Bush administration. So
yeah. But in that book, he talked about one of the reasons that we went to war with Iraq was to assure that Saddam couldn't close the Straits of Hormuz. So it seems to me if Alan Greenspan could write about that potential in the region from 2008, that our president should be able to. All right, before moving on, Jim, and I like numbers. I see your super chat. I'm going to post it. I just want to ask Jim this last question. Realistically, Jim, at this point, what might Trump actually do to make this go the way that you would have wanted at the beginning? I mean, realistically. I mean, I know you could come up with a scenario, but I'm saying, but realistically, what could happen that would vindicate the war?
Well, destroy, do what you threatened to do, at least. So, in other words, destroy those bridges, destroy the electric grid, hurt the economy, bring it to its knees. He says they'll never recover. No, they won't. They will recover. It may take them years, decades, I don't know. But you can rebuild electric plants and bridges. Believe it or not, Europe was utterly destroyed after World War II. Yeah. And in a few short years, you had the German miracle. You had Europe being rebuilt. I'm not saying it didn't take time. But what I'm saying is if you're serious about war, you destroy the enemy's economy. Every aspect of their functioning economy is part of their war machine until and unless you bring them to their knees. And that could be done. Let me put it this way. I would step up. I wouldn't pull back. And now the Straits of Hormuz, I mean, that's because you've conceded their continued existence, continued their ability to do this asymmetrically. And you're negotiating with people who, as I say, will deny whatever. Look, we're not even negotiating with you. So, I mean, no deal can possibly be worked out, Mr. Trump. He has to recognize that they're beyond the capacity for deal making, and that is not something that exists in his consciousness. There is no. He would have dealt with Adolf Hitler. There is no force in this world that Donald Trump does not think he can negotiate with. You destroy their economy. You make the people hurt. You turn the lights off. You make them suffer and starve. That is, if you're not willing to do that, you're not willing to go to war. And you have to be able to have the moral backbone to be able to, it takes a spine of steel and balls of brass, but you do have to, and if you're not willing to do that, don't go to war. But what you have to do is you have to be willing to say, yeah, guess what, Iranian people, this is what your regime, the dictators who rule you, have brought you to. And they are the ones responsible for this because they have been aggressively threatening their neighbors and others and killing people and pursuing a complex missile program. And guess what happens? You will suffer when you have a government like that. And the message needs to be delivered to, because there are still remnants in Iran who support the Islamic Republic. How do you get the message through to them? They must be psychologically cowed to the point of saying, yeah, you try this again, you will hurt, suffer, starve. The lights will go out. You will have no trade at all. The idea that Iran is still selling oil to India and China and getting boats out of there is mind-boggling to me, because in any decent war, the enemy you destroy enemy shipping. In any real war, if you mean to win it quickly and decisively. But and Jim, that is the only moral way to go about doing war.
But this frustrates me so much, Jim, because how could anybody have not known, given the man's track record? I mean, Trump. If not that this type of thing was inevitable, that it was a real high probability. Now, I could never predict at the beginning which way it would go wrong. All I know is that
I had a very clear idea.
Yeah,
knew that it would be pulling punches.
That part of it, sure. I don't
fear. The rational fear was this: what we're living through, pulling punches, semi-war, an A and non-A kind of war, which is just a non-war war.
Yeah.
War versus ground war, mission creep like Iraq and Afghanistan. No, because of the recent experience in Iran and Afghanistan and Trump's previous, for what it's worth, what his previous language gave me an indication of, this is the direction that I feared. A negotiation, an exercise in pulling your punches.
God, my brain is going. Who was the leader of Japan? Not Hirohito, the prime minister. Tojo, yeah. I kept coming in Tito, and I'm thinking, no, Tito is in
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia, yeah. Can you imagine if they had been negotiating with Tojo, with Hirohito, and they said, oh, they don't have to utter the words unconditional surrender. They've already unconditionally surrendered. Like, they'd be ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
But Trump somehow gets away with it. Okay, so we have a $2 super chat from I Like Numbers with a compliment to Jim and Leonard for being rational on ice.
Thank you so much. I think it was an enormous. I've been arguing with Leonard Peikoff on this subject for months, maybe years now. And I was kind of proud of myself that he kind of endorsed my approach when I saw it. He said, "This is brilliant, Jim. This is probably the correct application of objectivism to the issue." Now, I distinguish our two articles, but he definitely was following up on mine. So, but
Akira Felix is going to get on my bad side for the moment, and I love Akira Felix.
Yes.
He says, Obama and Biden made deals with Iran. This is not a strong argument. If anything, it proves that Trump is doing what Democrats do. The problem, and this argument constantly comes out, but the Democrats did it too. Okay, you cannot have it both ways. Not you necessarily, Akira, because I know you don't like Trump. But the argument for Trump, when people argue for Trump, is he's so different. When he then does something that everybody else does, you can't defend him by saying, well, everybody else does it. He's supposed to be different. And by the way, people criticized Obama for making deals with Iran.
Yeah, the JC
people, right? People. So you can criticize them for making deals, but I'll say this: none of them were as obsessed with deals as Trump.
Well, that's true. Well, they were more appeasing. They were truly more appeasing of Iran. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Trump has been more aggressive when it comes to Iran, but he's willing to negotiate with them. That's not the moral difference. So there is no sharp moral difference between the two, is all that's being pointed out here. Sharp enough, let's put it that way. He may have pulled out of the agreement that Obama did, and he may not have sent them billions of dollars like Obama did, and so forth and so on. But on the other hand, what he's done is said that, no, we don't really want regime change, whatever the noise that comes out of his mouth. But you know something, you make a point. If someone says there's no congressional authorization, and someone says, well, Obama, for many, many months, longer than the War Powers Act, was doing war in Libya, which, is designed for regime change, et cetera. It doesn't answer the constitutional question. Because Obama violated the Constitution doesn't make it okay if Trump violates the Constitution. The fact that this is what everyone's expectation set is now is somewhat, or hypocritically, Democrats will say, oh, well, this is illegal, but Obama's wasn't. Okay, I grant you, when someone's being a hypocrite like that, you can call them out for their hypocrisy.
Yes. But
the point is, it doesn't turn it into a constitutional exercise just because some previous president also violated the Constitution in a similar way. Oh, recently, Obama did a similarly unconstitutional thing. How does that make it okay under the Constitution?
$2 from Jenna Kleem. Thank you so much, Jenna. Persephone, can you put the picture up that I sent you that Trump posted of himself, please? I want to. Don't. Okay, we got to discuss this, and then I do want to get to the great Thomas Jefferson on his birthday.
It is so eloquent a contrast that it's.
Yes, it actually is, but yeah, I just don't ever see. I don't think that Trump has the capacity. I don't think he has the competence to do this type of thing.
I think you're being vindicated in that point you made. I think in that aspect of our debate, you win, my brother.
All right, get the clip.
No.
Get the clip.
Let me just say this generally to people. Be prepared when reality tells you were wrong about something. Or if you misjudge something, or say even as simple as a misprediction of a future no one can know, say it out loud. I was wrong. You were right. Get comfortable saying that.
I'm with you 100%. Look, I've been wrong in the past, and I can guarantee I'll be wrong again.
I can guarantee I will make mistakes.
Yeah, especially when it comes to predictions.
Oh.
Right? So I like Number
behavior.
Says...
I can tell the perihelion of Mars 2013 years from now.
Yeah, but human behavior.
Being.
Yeah.
So, that is true.
So I like Numbers. You may now have gotten on his bad side. Give another $2 if Jim's wrong about this. I like Numbers. No. So I like Numbers says Iran's not over yet. No, but I believe it's already beyond the 4 to 6 weeks that he said it was initially going to be. He's already failed to do what he said he was going to do, and that's, obliterate them. He did not go to help the Iranian people, which is what he promised them he was going thing to do. That clearly didn't happen. So, I mean, there's already been numerous failures. Whether he can rescue victory from the jaws of defeat, yes, of course, it's not over yet, and you may see something different. But that doesn't mean that you can't criticize what's happened so far.
Right. And what I have is Trump's behavior during the last month to go by. And going by that, I don't see something great happen. I mean, it might. I mean, again, predicting human behavior is a very dangerous. Yogi Berra was correct. Predictions are hard, especially about the future,
right,
when it comes to humans in particular.
So
all I can do is go by the character of the man as he's demonstrated it in war in the last month. And if that's not some evidence, on the other hand, could things be better than they are now? I don't know.
Okay, so here's Bonnie, and I'm going to answer this. So if Trump is the problem, should we have given Khomeini 3.5 more years to get nukes? Here's the problem with the question, Bonnie, is you're assuming Trump is going to stop them from getting nukes. Right? But in actuality, they still have their enriched uranium underground that they haven't gone in and gotten. I believe they still have half of their missiles, their missile stockpile.
A bunch of missiles.
And in the meantime, so they still have that. The regime is still in place to sponsor terror.
Yes.
We've spent an abundance of money on it, 13 American lives, the lives of numerous Israelis that are being bombed. You've also had a school that was hit. Now, look, in war, collateral damage happens. But when it happens and you don't accomplish anything by it, that's sad. And not only that, but he's alienating all of the NATO alliance. And we're going to pay a steep price in terms of actual prices.
Yeah.
So, okay, Bonnie says she's not assuming. The question seemed to imply it, Bonnie.
Yeah,
So the problem that, Bonnie, then with the question is that's look like it's going to happen anyway, that they're going to have more time. And the only thing is that we're taking a screwing on other fronts. Now, again, that can change.
Yeah, we'll pay this huge cost in lives and treasure and higher prices. And we'll pay this huge price that Trump says he was willing to take on our behalf, yes, Mr. President, without really accomplishing even the goals he set out, much less any real benefit for it, which is the only thing that would have justified it in my view. I had hoped that, and I must say that, there's no question the Iranian regime is dangerous and evil, but I had hoped for something much better. And now that I see him in action,
so Bonnie's question now is what should have been done. And to this, I'm going to just refer to Ayn Rand, right? Ayn Rand was once asked what should be done about the Vietnam War. And she said she was going to paraphrase or quote Napoleon. When somebody asked him about a wartime disaster and asked him what he would do about it, she said, the guy told Napoleon, "You're the best general in the world. What would you do about this?" And he responded, "I'm the best general in the world because I would have never gotten into that situation. Right? So once Trump is the president of the United States, once people have elected him, I don't know the answer because I'm not confident in anything that he does. And that's just, what it is. I don't know.
This is why to the extent that we can get through, look, all my life it's been a descending staircase into hell with American politicians. My entire life, I've been aware of politics since I was precocious as a young person, but over 50 years now, I've been observing American politics, and it has been a descent into hell. And so what you could do is you try and spare yourself from the worst consequences, even though someone you dramatically disagree with is in power. During the Clinton administration, there were times when I said, aha, you see, we got Clinton. Ha, ha, ha. But I can't say that I've experienced that much with these rotten presidents that we've had. You see, that even that phenomenon, this guy's a creep, but at least I'm getting a slightly better or less disastrous policy from him. That's all we can really realistically hope for, though, Michael. And that's what we have to bear in mind. Until the political culture revolutionarily, if I can use the word Trump used, revolutionarily, it's an interesting word he'd coined, but changes, unless there's a fundamental change in the American political landscape, All we can do is minimize the damage, hopefully get our foot in the door on some better policies. So, for example, I'm willing to give Trump some credit in undoing some of the worst environmental policies of Obama and Biden when it comes to energy production. I think in that area, I can actually say, drill, baby, drill, and Trump has permitted. Now, is it a fundamental answer? No, it's not a fundamental answer. We're still in the grip of economic regulation and environmentalism, even to some extent with Trump. But I try and say to myself, assess, let me put it this way, assess what was better and worse about a variety of administrations. And what we do is we argue with the policy and hope to have some influence in moving it in a better direction. That's the best we can hope for in this context.
So this is Bonnie's asking a question, and this is going to get into like a lot of different things that I don't know, because I do want to get to the other stuff. But I will say this, in this, I mean, we could say we don't believe the intelligence, we don't believe the IAEA, and that's all fine. But then you can't believe them about the things that support your case either. The bottom line is all accounts say that Iran was abiding by the JCPOA. Whether we like the deal or not, whether we believe it or not, and look, I'm skeptical, and I'm always skeptical of what these intelligence agencies have to say.
If Witkoff was telling the truth, they were defiantly saying that we kind of violated.
Well, Witkoff, I believe, is saying that happened, but that's after Trump came out of it.
This is true, but...
Right? So, no, what I'm saying is that prior to Trump removing us from the agreement in his last term in office, all these agencies say they were abiding by it.
Well, that is something we can't really know.
Okay, but therein lies the problem. No, because if we're going to say, well, look, they've enriched 60% uranium.
When someone has a concern, hey, are you doing this? What you do is you kick open, if you really are good faith, what you do is you kick open the doors and you make it so that they can know. So the truth is that if Iran is hiding something a mile under a mountain, and, to all appearances, they're abiding by it, and it looks like they're, could be still pursuing it, and what we know they do have is dangerous and has a specific purpose, then we have to draw inferences. And
well, they weren't under that. They weren't enriching uranium up to 60%, according to the people that were inspecting. They didn't have the intermediate range missiles.
How much had they gotten up to
under the JCPOA?
Yeah. Wait.
Persephone, can you look up
2021? How?
No. It's before that. It's when Trump pulled out of it. So you'd have to go to before that.
Well,
what were they? What was their uranium enriched to, according to the intelligence? And again, I'm not saying that because
you're threading a needle of analysis that I think is a really hard one to make.
Of course it is, but we necessarily have limited information.
Well, that's true.
Right. So we have to base it. So when Bonnie says, well, should they just have allowed him to get it? And the problem is, well, should they have come out of the JCPOA, or should they have tried to do something different? Now, there's also arguments out there, and I don't know. I'm just saying that they were enriching high amounts of uranium as a negotiating tool. They misjudged. What the truth of the matter is, I don't know, because I don't trust the Iranians, but I don't trust Trump either. So I'm in a difficult spot, Bonnie, where ultimately I don't know. First of all, I don't know that I don't know that they're going to stop. See, this is
Look, the hell began when an act of war occurred in 1979, and we did not respond to it. And from there, it was just straight downhill. And with every American soldier.
Okay, are you ready? Are you ready, Jim?
Sure.
Okay. Before 2021, Iran was restricted to enriching uranium to 3.67% under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. However, following a December 2020 decision and leading into early 2021, so after the U.S. pulled out of the deal, Iran began increasing enrichment levels, reaching approximately 20% by January 2021, and of course the 60% that we're now involved in.
Ooh, that's something to think about.
Well, it is, but my point is in trying to answer Bonnie's question, is that at the point we're at now, where they're at 60% enrichment, We don't, and we don't trust them. But you also, you have to go to war with the army you've got, to, as Rumsfeld once said. And that might mean not going to war if it's going to cause more harm than benefit. So in terms of constitutional erosion, which was already eroding, but it's further eroded with Trump, in terms of the gas prices, the other fertilizer prices that are coming, are standing around the world, the emboldening of the Iranian regime, in my estimation, it's better. It would have been better to do nothing.
Oh yeah, in my estimation, if it looks like what's going to happen happens, it would have been better if Trump had just simply said it's not worth it from the outset, and just tried to economically contain them. I mean, he was doing better, it seems to me, when he was trying to economically contain and bottle them up, and getting as much, juice from that lemon that we could, short of war. But when you engage in warfare, you better be prepared to do it properly, or it's not going to be worth it. Tell me, Michael, what's one life worth? It is a priceless, irreplaceable value. You do not go to war unless you mean to go to war and mean to win it decisively and as quickly as possible, or it is a totally evil, horrible thing to do at all.
Yeah. And
war is a nightmare. It is one of the greatest hells and banes of human history.
So Akira Felix, Trump promised help on January 2nd. Yes, Bonnie, but he hasn't given the help. So that doesn't, that doesn't.
And people have been dying ever since.
Matter. Right. I mean, so I don't know. And Akira Felix point out that Tulsi Gabbard said they weren't developing a nuke, and that was just last month. You're right, Akira, but I want to move on to the next story. Jim, I frequently send you stuff that comes out of the administration that's of a religious nature, whether it be the DHS, the Department of State, the Department of War, whatever. And there's a lot of this stuff. Now, recently, Rubio said something to the effect of, these people are religious fanatics when referring to the Iranians.
It's just disgusting. Sickening. I mean, what can I tell you? It is the cult-like, and there are degrees of cult-like treatment of politicians, which I find utterly disgusting at any time. Okay, politicians. I mean, and I'll go so far back as Thomas Jefferson. This is Tom's birthday, but the point is, political leaders are not gods. They should not be treated as messianic figures. The Pope and the President are currently in a rhetorical exchange. And look, this is sickening. It's sickening to treat politicians as if they're messianic or divine figures. And it is also, and most importantly, since you are a very keen defender of the Constitution, a clear violation in my mind of the First Amendment. The first line of the United States Bill of Rights: Congress will make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And so it is priority number one that we have a secular government, and one that does not take specific, and looking at the memes that are coming out of the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, they are sectarian, partisan, Christian crap. And they are a violation of the First Amendment, in various ways, mostly because of public education. But in various ways, of course, in the 20th century, the Supreme Court has had shots at what the Establishment Clause means and what the extent of it. For example, teachers can't lead in public schools, of course. In private schools, they can do what they like, of course. But in public schools, teachers can't lead students in a prayer. Even moments of silence are questionable, right? So how do you get away with, "In God we trust" was not the original motto of the United States, but it did come along, in the wake of communism. So how did they get away with that? Well, the Supreme Court said, okay, God is so vague a concept. It could be, Ayn Rand once said, "I don't mind the term God bless you, because in my mind it means the highest, the abstraction, like God bless you could be used in a very abstract. If an atheist can use the term God bless you, like Ayn Rand, or you could be a pantheist or a deist or something like that. So the concept God, the Supreme Court is kind of squishy on the word God. But if you get any more sectarian than that, you're going to have trouble, says this. I myself would be much tougher. I myself, if I was, Justice Jim on the Supreme Court, I'd say, God, out. But, the framers used words like providence and things like that. So, but the point, though, is that anything beyond that is clearly a violation of the First Amendment. And when you see these part of "He is risen" with quotes from the Gospel of Luke or something come out from the Department of Homeland Security, the Gospel of Luke should not be endorsed by the United States government. That's a clear violation of the First effing Amendment.
Right. So, Jim, today's Thomas Jefferson's birthday.
Speaking of religious freedom,
and I want to find this. Let me just find it here quickly. I want to share some quotes from Mr. Jefferson on this topic. He said, "In every country and every age, the priest has been hostile to liberty. He is always in alliance with the despot, abetting his abuses in return for protection to his own. The day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus by the Supreme Being as his father in the womb of a virgin will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. It does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no gods." Hold on. History, I believe, furnishes no example of a priest-ridden people maintaining a free civil government. This marks the lowest grade of ignorance of which their civil as well as religious leader will always avail themselves for their own purposes. And let me just find this real quick. I want to give a quick read here, if I can just find it. Jefferson's famous letter to the
his nephew,
Danbury Baptist.
Oh, the band,
which of course is not far from me. I'm in Danbury. I'm in Danbury, Connecticut.
Yes.
So he says,
"Wall of separation, baby."
Jefferson says, "Gentlemen, the affectionate sentiments of esteem and approbation which you are so good as to express toward me on behalf of the Danbury Baptist Association give me the highest satisfaction. My duties dictate a faithful and zealous pursuit of the interest of my constituents, and in proportion as they are persuaded of my fidelity to those duties, the discharge of them becomes more and more pleasing. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign faith or with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." Mr. Jefferson.
He wrote to his nephew, "Question with boldness even the existence of a God." And his logic was sound. He said, if there is a God, surely he doesn't want you to dismiss reason. He'd respect you being an atheist if that's your sincere, rational opinion, more than he would to blindfolded faith. That was Jefferson. Jefferson was a deist, I think. He was not what you could call a Christian. But what he thought was, he was deeply influenced by figures from the French Enlightenment, I believe, like Voltaire and Diderot. He was also, you can hear that Voltaire's were the three greatest men who ever lived. Bacon, Newton, and Locke, says Voltaire. Jefferson perfectly echoes that. If God made us the way we are, then we use our reason, and God can't hold me accountable for that. That's an idea that comes from the French Enlightenment as well. And so Jefferson was an amazing man. He was a scholar of Greek. He did his own Greek translation of the New Testament, where he cut out all the miracles. Now, the compromise is that he left in the moral teachings, of course, but he was let's put it this way, Jefferson was an early textual critic of the Bible. So, and as you pointed out, the idea of a virgin birth or other such miraculous things that you read in the Gospels, he was a man of the Enlightenment. He was a man of science. He was not only in his own way a biblical scholar. He was an archaeologist, an architect, the inventor, an amazing man, really, in so many different ways. Just describing the physical condition of Virginia in his notes on the state of Virginia. I mean, the man was a scientific man of the Enlightenment, who believed that through observation and logic we could know the world. The dominating idea at his time. America was the product of that attitude. And you think, well, what an extraordinary good fortune America had to have such great people as their founders, like Benjamin Franklin, who, by the way, was also no Christian, but was friendly with a variety of denominations, just like Mr. Jefferson was there in the letter to the Danbury Baptists. He didn't think that he wasn't hostile to people if they had a religion. He didn't condemn them if they were Baptists or Quakers or whatever. On the other hand, he cannot be classified as a Christian. And he, too, was a scientific man, a man of invention. And so you think to yourself, how did America get so fortunate as to have, and these people hung out with the Enlightenment figures of their time. I mean, Franklin goes to Europe and meets people like Voltaire and Hume.
Sounds like a movie. Franklin Goes to Europe.
Well, yeah, but the truth is he hung out with major Enlightenment figures in England and France. And you say, well, how is it that America got so lucky to have such brilliant founders? It was the era, ladies and gentlemen. A culture that encourages reason will look like that. And it'll seem extraordinary to us in retrospect. Gosh, all these scientific-minded, rational guys, all at once, all coincidentally at the same time? No. There are no coincidences. In law enforcement and history, you should be suspicious of any coincidence. You should try and find if there's a correlation or, more importantly still, a causal relationship between those things. And there was. The current moment, the 21st century, is a comparatively let me put it this way, nihilistic, anti-reality, anti-reason, and in its fundamental attitudes. And so we see increasing, mysticism on the right and neo-mysticism on the left of various kinds. Ayn Rand nailed it. Our culture nailed it 60, 70 years ago by saying, look, our culture is in crisis. We are losing our old faith. That is true, thanks to, from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment, religion was in retreat, as the best way to put it. And it sort of reached a climax in some ways in the 19th century, when the idea of religion really was, intelligent people, seriously intelligent people were rejecting standard religion across the board almost. But America and the West in general has been receding from that with the onslaught of anti-reason philosophies. The reason never really had a sound full defense, but at least the Enlightenment philosophers were trying to wrestle with the great philosophical issues and come up with a way, the religious ones, a way to reconcile the idea of God in a world of science. Well, that was abandoned as confidence in reason was abandoned. And there we have to blame people like Hume and especially Kant. And in the wake of Hume and Kant, the intellectuals, and this is the way it works, the intellectuals are the vanguard. They've been leading us away from reason. So even as the West got better in many ways, politically and technologically and economically, we continue to ride on the pro-reason revolution, the industrial revolution, the revolution in science for the next 2 centuries. And still to this day, we're still riding on the achievements of that and the further consequences of that and the remnants of what pro-reason elements there are still in our society. And so in many ways, the world is better than today, in terms of infant mortality, the amount of protein in the average person's diet, the amazing conveniences we have like smartphones and so forth. The world is a better place in health and medicine. The world is a better place in many, many ways today than it has ever been before. And women have rights in a way they did not have. Slavery has been abolished in a way that still existed at the time of the American Revolution, for example. Jefferson, he hated slavery, but he did not free his slaves like George Washington. So he was a slave owner and must be judged because, by the time you get to the Enlightenment, you're getting to a point where you can now, after arguments like John Locke's or Montesquieu's against slavery, you now are in a world where intelligent people like Jefferson, like Franklin, like George Washington were saying, this is really a horrible thing. He was a slave owner aware that it was a horrible thing. And so we have to judge Jefferson, negatively to that extent. I mean, if I go back to the 12th century and I blame someone for being an atheist, I think I'm really dropping context. But if I go to the late Enlightenment and I start judging people for owning slavery, I'm starting to enter a world where it's okay to judge them. On the other hand, I have to give Thomas Jefferson some credit in precisely this area. It was the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. All men enjoy the individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson wanted to include an anti-slavery clause in the Declaration. The Carolinas would have none of it, of course, and we needed unanimity.
Well, he also wanted to blame King George for
Well, it was the British slave
he said
trade,
he said that they're forcing slavery on us.
Well, it would not, obviously not on the Carolinas, who simply would have withdrawn from the American Revolution had that gone in. And they made it very clear that they would. And so, we're not joining a revolution if it means we don't get to keep our slaves. But the truth, with the assertion at least, in the Declaration was based on a reality. It was the British Empire. And even after the American Revolution, what was it, in the 1830s, there was a slave trade going on in the British Empire, if not in England itself.
One of the things that in one of the articles that I sent, they made a very good point about Jefferson. They said some people will ask, how could a man so for freedom and so against slavery own slaves? But they also said, but another question is, how could a man of the South who grew up that way be so opposed to slavery and come to the views he had? There's a great book, and I can't remember who the hell wrote it now. Was it James Ellis? I don't know. American Sphinx, the character of Thomas Jefferson. Very, very good book, aptly titled, because he is very contradictory elements. But overall, the world is a much better place because Mr. Jefferson lived.
And he, more than most, was one of the people who helped end slavery, believe it or not, with the ideology he promoted. He gave, as I say, Lincoln, when he did turn the Civil War from a Save the Union thing into a crusade to end slavery.
Don't start that, Jim. We got 4 minutes left. 3 minutes.
The truth is, the ideas of the founding were absolutely inconsistent with slavery.
Yes.
And Mr. Lincoln brought that out clearly in his speeches. And the abolitionist movement, from the founding of America through the Civil War, was constantly harping on that. And how slavery was utterly inconsistent with our founding ideas. It is true. And those founding ideas and its articulators were some of the leaders in ending the institution in the civilized world, at least the legal institution of slavery in the civilized world. So he gets some credit. Jefferson, in my view, gets some significant credit for ending slavery, even though he was a lifelong slave owner.
Well, he knew clearly that it couldn't last, right?
He trembled when he thought, what was the famous quote? I tremble
for the future of my nation when I reflect that God is just, that his justice will not sleep forever.
On the issue of slavery. Yes. And boy, was that prescient, eh?
Yes, it was. And we are up here to 812 subscribers. So before Jim gives his capitalist thought of the day, we only have one comment. It's from Jenna Kleem in relation to the birthday question. My birthday is typically celebrated by my loyal subjects with a chocolate ice cream cake, after which I come home to read. Stay mindful, stay kind. Thank you, Jenna. No, we did not get to Viktor Orban. He lost over there. Yes, indeed, a defeat for the National Conservatives. I just don't know that it is actually a victory for the good, and that's why I didn't really
bad things can go away, and that doesn't mean a good thing will replace.
And it might be. I just don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but the if you think about it, Orban, Putin, and Trump kind of coordinate in a movement of sort of religious nationalism, and that is an evil specter growing on the right. You've got me to read all kinds of things, such as Patrick Deneen, over the course of our relationship over the last few years, Mr. Liebowitz, that have been very unpleasant to read. But when you do check out what the new right has been over the last 10 years, 15 years, and is becoming more and more, it is very, very depressing. The ideas of reason and individualism, the ideas of Mr. Jefferson, are not the dominant ideas today.
Thank you, Gary Menard, $1.99 super sticker. All right, Jim, give our capitalist thought of the day.
Oh, geez, you always do this to me. Put me on the spot like this.
Well, how's it on the spot if I always do it to you? You know
Right.
it's coming.
I mean, some of the time you should do it. Anyway, I'm going to go for it all the way. Religion is inconsistent with capitalism. Religion is inconsistent with freedom. As Mr. Thomas Jefferson understood, faith and force have been allies from the start, and reason and freedom are natural allies. And to defend freedom ultimately means we defend reason. First of all, how do we defend freedom but for the method of reason? But more than that, the very functioning of reason, our tool of survival and our way of knowing, for it to function properly in society, the basic condition is human freedom. To render all human interaction voluntary to the extent that we can is the sole function and purpose of government, i.e. the protection of individual rights. And if government is not kept in that cage, tyranny is close around the corner.
Jim, thank you so much for that. And the question that I would like everybody to go to YouTube and answer is, what are you most optimistic about in life? Please go to YouTube and answer it. What are you most optimistic about? And thanks everybody for joining us here today. I hope you enjoyed the program. Mark should be here tomorrow. And if I can convince Jim, he and I will be doing a live stream soon concerning his immigration paper. So
sounds like fun. Oh,
right.
You know the term? Do you know that before we sign off, you know the term aho? AHO?
I've heard people use that term before. Yes, aho.
Aho. Yeah. So I'm giving you a big aho. It's it's a more Native American,
So if I do this, the stream with you, you're going to give me a hoe?
A totally different meaning. No, a hoe is for those who don't know, it's a Lakota Sioux term, which originates with a word that meant thank you, but comes to mean, yeah, right on. Like he said, I agree. So a hoe.
Oh, all right, everybody. Thank you very much. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Remember, 2:30 p.m. today, we have Everyday Ethics. And then at 3:15 p.m., we have Crime, Corrections, and Culture, all on this same channel. This channel is growing, and we will have more programming. I predict it. All right. Thank you so much. Check your premises. Peace.